The polished marble floors of the Monarch Palace Hotel reflected the soft golden glow of crystal chandeliers, creating an atmosphere of refined luxury that had drawn the world's elite for over a century. The grand lobby hummed with the quiet conversations of guests in designer attire, the gentle notes of a classical pianist providing a sophisticated soundtrack to their evening. Among them moved Morgan Williams, her petite frame dressed in worn jeans, a faded navy sweatshirt with paint splatters across the front, and scuffed running shoes. At 34, her naturally beautiful face was free of makeup, her auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun secured with what appeared to be a pencil. A battered canvas backpack hung from one shoulder, completing an image that stood in stark contrast to the opulence surrounding her. Morgan approached the gleaming reception desk where two impeccably dressed employees stood at attention. The exhaustion of the day weighed on her shoulders, but her steps were purposeful. After 14 hours overseeing an emergency shelter renovation for families displaced by recent flooding, the thought of driving 2 more hours to her home outside the city made her bones ache. Her husband Daniel had called an hour ago, insisting she stay at his hotel when she mentioned her fatigue. "I'll let the staff know you're coming," he'd promised, his voice warm with concern. "Just get some rest, love. The shelter renovations can wait until you've had a decent night's sleep." The receptionist, a young woman with a perfect blonde chignon and a nameplate reading Allison, looked up as Morgan approached. Her professional smile remained fixed, but her eyes performed a quick assessment of Morgan's disheveled appearance, clearly finding it wanting. "Good evening," Morgan said, offering a tired smile. "I'm Morgan Williams. My husband should have called about a room for me." Allison's gaze flickered to Morgan's paint-speckled hands and worn clothing. "Do you have identification, madam?" Her tone held a note of skepticism that wasn't lost on Morgan. "Of course." Morgan dug through her backpack, finding her wallet among building plans and charity grant applications. She handed over her driver's license. "Morgan Williams." Allison examined the ID with exaggerated care, then glanced at her colleague, a well-groomed man in his 30s whose nameplate read, Trevor. They exchanged a look that spoke volumes. "And you say Mr. Williams arranged a room for you?" Trevor asked, his polite tone barely masking his disbelief. "Yes, Daniel Williams. He called about an hour ago." Morgan maintained her composure, though fatigue made her patience wear thin. "He owns this hotel." Trevor's eyebrows rose fractionally. "Mr. Williams, the owner of the Monarch Palace hotel chain." It wasn't a question, but the implication was clear. Morgan nodded, too tired for games. "That's right." Allison leaned forward, lowering her voice but not enough to prevent nearby guests from overhearing. "Ma'am, this is a 5-star luxury establishment. Perhaps there's been some confusion." Morgan felt a flush creeping up her neck. "There's no confusion. I'm Morgan Williams, Daniel Williams' wife. He owns this hotel chain, and he called ahead to reserve a room for me." The lobby had grown quieter, with several guests now watching the exchange with undisguised interest. A woman in diamonds whispered something to her companion, who snickered behind his hand. "Of course you are," Trevor said, his voice dripping with condescension. "And I'm friends with the royal family." "I'm not claiming anything," Morgan stated firmly, though her voice remained level. "I am Morgan Williams. My husband is Daniel Williams. He owns this hotel, and he arranged a room for me because I've been working all day helping flood victims." A well-dressed couple nearby had stopped to watch, the woman whispering something to her husband. Trevor noticed their attention and seemed to grow more confident in his position. "Mrs. Williams," he emphasized the name with obvious disbelief, "is a former gallery owner who serves on the board of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. She attends the governor's ball each year." His eyes swept over Morgan's paint-stained sweatshirt and worn jeans. "Perhaps you'd like to try another establishment better suited to your circumstances." Morgan felt a flash of indignation. This wasn't about her. She'd experienced such treatment before and had developed a thick skin. But it represented something much uglier. The assumption that worth was tied to appearance, that someone's humanity could be dismissed based on the clothes they wore. "My husband called ahead," she repeated, her voice steady despite her growing frustration. "Please check your system." Trevor sighed dramatically and made a show of typing on his computer. "No reservation under Morgan Williams." No note from Mr. Williams either. He looked up with feigned sympathy. How surprising. Could you call him, please? Morgan asked, maintaining her composure despite the growing audience. Call Mr. Williams directly? Allison laughed lightly. Mr. Williams is one of the most influential businessmen in the country. We don't just call him because someone in paint-covered clothes claims to be his wife. Morgan took a deep breath. Then call the manager on duty. That won't be necessary, Trevor replied smoothly. Listen, we're very busy with actual guests. He gestured to the line forming behind Morgan. The budget in 5 blocks down might have availability. A distinguished older gentleman in line spoke up. Is there a problem here? Trevor turned to him with a completely transformed expression. Warm, welcoming, respectful. No problem at all, sir. Just directing this person to more suitable accommodations. I'm not leaving, Morgan said quietly but firmly. My husband is Daniel Williams. This is his hotel, and I'd like to speak to the manager now. Trevor's smile vanished entirely. Security will escort you out if necessary. As if on cue, a security guard approached. Everything all right here? This woman is refusing to leave, Trevor explained, his voice carrying across the now silent lobby. She's claiming to be Mrs. Williams and causing a disturbance. The security guard, a middle-aged man whose nameplate read Howard, turned to Morgan. Ma'am, I'll have to ask you to come with me. Several guests were now openly watching, some with phones raised discreetly. Morgan felt a wave of embarrassment wash over her, but stood her ground. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every person who'd ever been judged by their appearance rather than their character. I am not causing a disturbance, she said clearly. I am trying to check into my husband's hotel after spending the day helping families who lost everything in the floods. Howard looked uncomfortable but maintained his professional stance. Please don't make this difficult, ma'am. I want to speak to your general manager. Morgan's voice was calm but firm. Trevor smirked. Jonathan is at a conference in Chicago. I'm the most senior staff member on duty. Then call Jonathan. Or better yet, call Daniel Williams directly. I guarantee he'll be interested to hear how you're treating his wife. An elegant woman in designer clothes who had been watching the exchange approached. Perhaps you should check again, she suggested to Trevor. This seems like a misunderstanding that could become awkward. Trevor straightened his tie. Mrs. Harrington, I assure you we know the Williams family well. This woman is not Morgan Williams. Mrs. Harrington looked at Morgan with a mixture of pity and embarrassment. Of course, I just thought. It's fine, Morgan interrupted. I appreciate your concern. She turned back to Trevor. I'm going to sit in the lobby and wait for my husband. He'll be here soon. I've been more than patient, Trevor said, his tone hardening. Howard, please escort this person out now. The security guard stepped forward reluctantly. Ma'am, please don't make me remove you physically. Morgan felt all eyes on her, the wealthy guests, the staff, everyone witnessing her humiliation. For a moment, she considered walking out, avoiding the scene that was unfolding. But something inside her refused to bend. You're making a mistake, she said quietly. The only mistake, Allison interjected, was letting you through the door. We don't serve your kind here. A collective gasp rose from some of the observers. Morgan's cheeks burned with anger and embarrassment. My kind, she repeated. People looking for handouts, Trevor clarified, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. People pretending to be something they're not. Howard placed a hand on Morgan's arm. Ma'am, please. Morgan pulled her arm away. Don't touch me. The tension in the lobby was palpable. Some guests looked uncomfortable, others curious. A few even seemed entertained by the spectacle. Morgan stood alone, surrounded by luxury yet made to feel completely worthless because of her appearance. We don't serve the poor, Allison hissed, her professional mask slipping completely. The words hung in the air like a physical presence, shocking in their naked contempt. Even Trevor looked surprised at his colleague's outburst. For Morgan, time seemed to slow down. In that moment, She wasn't just Morgan Williams, wife of a billionaire being denied entry to his hotel. She was every person who'd ever been judged by their clothes, their accent, their appearance. Every homeless individual she'd helped at the shelter, every struggling artist she'd mentored, every dreamer dismissed before being given a chance. Howard's grip tightened on her arm. "Ma'am, I need you to leave now." As he began to guide her toward the exit, the grand revolving doors at the entrance spun, and a tall figure in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit stepped into the lobby. Daniel Williams entered the Monarch Palace with the quiet confidence of a man who knew his place in the world. At 41, his dark hair graying slightly at the temples gave him a distinguished appearance that commanded respect without demanding it. His keen gray eyes took in the scene before him in an instant. His wife being escorted toward the door by security, the smug expressions of the reception staff, the circle of onlookers watching the drama unfold. For a moment, he simply observed, his presence unnoticed in the commotion. In business, Daniel had learned that the most revealing insights came when people thought no one important was watching. What he saw now, his exhausted wife, who had spent the day helping others, being treated with contempt by his own staff, filled him with a cold, quiet anger. He moved forward silently, catching fragments of conversation. "Can't believe she thought that would work. Claiming to be Mrs. Williams, of all people. Some people have no shame." As he approached, Morgan spotted him. The relief in her eyes was evident, but she made no grand gesture, no triumphant announcement. That quiet dignity, her refusal to gloat even now, was one of the countless reasons he'd fallen in love with her. Daniel placed a hand gently on Howard's shoulder, causing the security guard to turn. "Excuse me," Daniel said quietly. "Is there a problem here?" Howard's expression shifted from surprise to recognition in an instant. "Mr. Williams, sir. You can release my wife's arm now, Howard." The words dropped into the lobby like stones into still water, sending ripples of shock through everyone within earshot. Howard immediately let go of Morgan's arm as if it had suddenly burned him. "Your wife," he stammered. Daniel moved to Morgan's side, placing a protective arm around her shoulders. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. She nodded, the tension in her body relaxing slightly at his presence. "Just a misunderstanding, apparently." Trevor and Allison had gone completely pale, frozen behind the reception desk. The lobby had fallen into a stunned silence, with every eye fixed on the unfolding scene. "Daniel," Trevor finally managed, his voice unnaturally high. "We had no idea." Daniel raised a hand, silencing him instantly. When he spoke, his voice was measured, controlled, and all the more powerful for it. "I'd like to understand exactly what happened here." He looked around at the gathered crowd, the security guard, and finally the reception staff. From the beginning, Trevor's professional composure had completely evaporated. "There's been a terrible misunderstanding, sir. We didn't recognize Mrs. Williams, and—" "You didn't recognize her," Daniel repeated, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp. "So naturally, you called security to remove her from the premises." "She didn't look like—" Allison began, then stopped abruptly, realizing the implication of her words. "Like what, exactly?" Daniel asked, his gaze fixed on her with unsettling intensity. Allison swallowed hard. "Like someone who would be Mrs. Williams." Daniel nodded slowly, as if considering this. "And what, in your professional opinion, should Mrs. Williams look like?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. Morgan squeezed her husband's hand, a silent request for restraint. She didn't want public humiliation as revenge, even for those who had tried to humiliate her. "Perhaps," Daniel continued, his voice now addressing the entire lobby, "this is an opportunity for us all to reflect on how quickly we judge others based on appearance." He surveyed the gathered crowd. "How many of you assumed my wife didn't belong here because of how she was dressed?" Several guests looked down uncomfortably. Mrs. Harrington, the woman who had intervened earlier, stepped forward. "I apologize for not speaking up more forcefully," she said directly to Morgan. "I knew something wasn't right about how you were being treated." Morgan smiled genuinely. "Thank you for trying." Daniel turned back to the reception staff. "Trevor, Allison, my office." Now. He glanced at Howard. You too. As they moved toward the elevator, Daniel paused and turned back to address the lobby once more. The Monarch Palace was founded on a principle of exceptional service for all our guests, not just those who fit a certain profile. I'm deeply disappointed that principle was forgotten today. With that, he guided Morgan toward the private elevator, leaving a chastened lobby full of guests and staff behind them. Daniel's private office on the top floor of the Monarch Palace offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, but no one was admiring the scenery. Trevor, Allison, and Howard stood rigidly before Daniel's desk, while Morgan sat quietly in a plush chair to the side, her backpack and paint-splattered sweatshirt a stark contrast to the refined elegance of the room. Daniel stood by the window for a moment, gathering his thoughts. When he turned to face them, his expression wasn't one of rage but of profound disappointment. I founded Monarch Luxury Properties 18 years ago, he began, his voice measured. My first hotel was a converted brownstone in Boston with just 12 rooms. I still remember making beds myself when we were short-staffed. He moved toward his desk, picking up a framed photo and turning it to show them a much younger Daniel in simple clothes, standing proudly in front of a modest building. I started with nothing, he continued. My father drove a delivery truck. My mother cleaned houses. The suits, the office, this hotel chain, they came later. Trevor and Allison exchanged uncomfortable glances. Sir, we had no idea it was Mrs. Williams, Trevor offered, his voice strained. We would never have. That's precisely the problem, Daniel interrupted. You shouldn't treat anyone the way you treated my wife today, whether they're married to me or not. Allison shifted nervously. We have standards to maintain. Standards? Daniel's voice sharpened. Let me tell you about standards, Allison. My wife runs a foundation that provides art therapy and emergency shelter for disaster victims. Children who have lost everything find hope because she sees their potential regardless of where they come from or what they wear. He placed the photo back on his desk carefully. Today, while dressed exactly as she is now, Morgan helped organize emergency housing for 15 families who lost their homes in the flooding. That's her standard. What's yours? Judging people by their clothes. Howard, the security guard, looked down at his shoes. Mr. Williams, I was just following protocol. Protocol to physically remove someone who wasn't causing a disturbance? Someone who simply didn't fit your image of what a guest should look like. Morgan spoke up for the first time. Daniel, they were doing their jobs as they understood them. Her voice was gentle but firm. That's the real issue here. Daniel's expression softened as he looked at his wife. She continued, addressing the 3 staff members directly. I'm not angry at you personally. I'm troubled by a system that taught you that worth is determined by appearance. That some people deserve dignity and others don't based on how they dress or how much money they seem to have. Trevor's professional veneer cracked, revealing genuine shame. Mrs. Williams, I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Morgan replied. Just listen. Daniel moved to stand behind his desk, every inch the CEO now. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling an emergency meeting of all hotel managers in the Monarch Group. We're implementing a complete overhaul of our training program, with a specific focus on eliminating bias and prejudice in customer service. He turned to Allison. The phrase, "we don't serve your kind here," will never be uttered in any of my hotels again. Am I clear? Allison nodded, her face flushed with embarrassment. Howard, Daniel continued, security's job is to protect guests, not intimidate them. New protocols will be developed immediately. Howard straightened. Yes, sir. And Trevor, Daniel said finally, as duty manager, the tone you set influences everyone. Your actions today reflected a culture that I never wanted to create in my hotels. Trevor looked as though he might be sick. Will we be terminated, sir? The question hung in the air. The 3 staff members stood frozen, awaiting their fate. Morgan stood and moved to her husband's side. They exchanged a look, a silent communication born of deep understanding and shared values. Daniel turned back to the staff. No, you won't be terminated. Their relief was palpable but short-lived. Instead, Daniel continued, you'll be the first to undergo the new training program, and then you'll help implement it across all our properties. Trevor looked up, surprised. Firing you would be easy, Daniel explained. Having you help transform our culture is much more valuable. You've experienced firsthand how bias can lead to horrible misjudgments. That makes you perfect ambassadors for change. Morgan smiled, clearly approving of this approach. Sometimes our worst mistakes can lead to our greatest contributions, if we're willing to learn from them. Allison, who had been silent, finally spoke. Why would you give us that chance after what we did? Morgan answered before Daniel could. Because every person deserves the opportunity to grow and change. Including you. Daniel nodded. Starting tomorrow, Trevor, you'll work with our HR team to develop comprehensive anti-bias training. Allison, you'll be temporarily reassigned to our community outreach program. He turned to Howard. And Howard, you'll help review and revise all security protocols to ensure they're both effective and respectful. The three stood straighter, the opportunity for redemption giving them a dignity that their earlier shame had stripped away. One more thing, Daniel added. You're each going to spend one day volunteering at my wife's foundation. I want you to see firsthand the incredible things that happen when people are valued for who they are, not what they wear or how much money they have. Morgan's eyes shone with emotion. This wasn't about punishment or revenge. It was about transformation. That will be all for now, Daniel concluded. You can return to your duties. We'll meet again tomorrow morning. As they filed out, each murmured apologies to Morgan. She acknowledged them with a nod, her expression neither vindictive nor particularly forgiving, simply human. When the door closed behind them, Daniel's formal demeanor melted away. He crossed to Morgan and took her hands in his. I'm so sorry you experienced that, he said softly. Morgan squeezed his hands. I'm not. Daniel looked surprised. You're not. No. Morgan shook her head. What happened today was awful, but it happens to people every day who don't have a billionaire husband to set things right. At least this way, something good might come from it. Daniel smiled, the private smile reserved only for her. That's why I married you, you know. Your ability to find purpose even in painful moments. Morgan picked up her backpack. So about that room service and hot bath you promised me. 3 months later, Morgan stood in the main lobby of the Monarch Palace, watching as Trevor welcomed an elderly man in a worn suit with a small suitcase. The transformation in his demeanor wasn't just professional, it was genuine. He escorted the man to the elevator with the same respect he would show a visiting dignitary. Quite a change, Daniel remarked, appearing at Morgan's side. Morgan nodded, satisfaction evident in her expression. The numbers reflect it too. Guest satisfaction is up 27% across all properties. What had begun as a response to one incident had evolved into a company-wide revolution. The Worth Beyond Appearance initiative had been implemented across every Monarch hotel, with Trevor, surprisingly, becoming its most passionate advocate. Trevor's leading another training session today, Daniel said. He's requested to take the program to our international properties next month. Morgan smiled. Sometimes people just need the opportunity to be better than they are. Across the lobby, Allison emerged from the back office, accompanying a young woman with visible burn scars on her face. The change in Allison was perhaps the most remarkable. After her time at Morgan's Foundation, she had requested permanent reassignment to community relations, where she now coordinated a program that provided hotel internships to disadvantaged youth. Mrs. Williams. Allison waved, guiding the young woman toward them. This is Jasmine. She's starting in the front office program today. Morgan greeted the nervous-looking young woman warmly. Jasmine was one of my art therapy students last year, she explained to Daniel. She has an incredible talent for organization and people skills. The guest relations team is excited to have you, Daniel told the young woman, shaking her hand. As Allison led Jasmine toward the front desk area, Morgan caught sight of Howard at his security post. The security protocols had been completely overhauled, with an emphasis on creating a welcoming environment while maintaining safety. Howard now trained all security staff personally, using his own experience as a teaching tool. "Your mistake has turned into something pretty remarkable," Morgan observed, linking her arm through her husband's as they walked through the lobby. Daniel chuckled. "My mistake. Marrying an art therapist who wears paint-splattered clothes to five-star hotels." He pulled her closer. "Best mistake I ever made." They paused at the entrance, where a new plaque had been installed. It read, "At Monarch Luxury Properties, we believe true luxury is treating every person with dignity and respect. We judge not by appearance, but by recognizing the inherent worth in each individual." Below was a quote that Morgan had suggested from her favorite poet. "We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike." As they stood admiring it, Mrs. Harrington, the woman who had tried to intervene during Morgan's humiliation, approached them. "Mrs. Williams, I've been meaning to thank you," she said. Morgan looked surprised. "Thank me for what?" "For changing this place. I've stayed at luxury hotels all my life, but this is the first time I've seen one with a soul." She glanced around the lobby. "My granddaughter now volunteers at your foundation, you know. She says it's changed her life." After Mrs. Harrington moved on, Morgan and Daniel continued toward the exit. Outside, the afternoon sun illuminated the city streets where people of all backgrounds moved about their day, each with their own story, their own dignity. "You know what the best part is?" Morgan mused. "What's that?" "This isn't just about one hotel or one incident anymore. Every person who experiences this change takes it with them. Trevor, Allison, and Howard will never see people the same way again. Neither will the guests who witness the difference." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "One small ripple becoming a wave." As they walked away from the hotel, Morgan still in her casual clothes with paint stains, they passed a street artist painting portraits on the sidewalk. Morgan stopped to admire his work, engaging him in a conversation about technique and inspiration. The artist, initially surprised by her knowledge, soon relaxed into an animated discussion. Daniel watched with quiet pride. This was the woman he had fallen in love with. Someone who could move effortlessly between worlds because she saw the humanity in everyone. Later that evening, as they drove back to their home outside the city, Morgan gazed out the window at the passing lights. "Something on your mind?" Daniel asked. "I was just thinking about what happened 3 months ago," she replied. "How something painful turned into something beautiful." "That's your gift," Daniel said simply. "Finding beauty where others see only problems." Morgan turned to her husband with a smile. "No, that's our gift now. And think of all the people who will never know they were judged by their appearance because of what we've started." As they left the city limits, heading toward the quiet sanctuary of their home, both knew that true change wasn't measured in corporate policies or training programs, though those were important. It was measured in moments of human connection, in dignity recognized and respect freely given. And sometimes, those moments began with something as simple as a woman in paint-stained clothes walking into a luxury hotel, refusing to be defined by appearances alone.